These are two of the best low-end or entry-level televisions of the 2024. On the left side, the Samsung DU8000, and on the right side, the TCL P755, both in 55-inch sizes in this case. Both are LCD televisions with a VA panel with LED backlighting technology. That LED technology on the Samsung would be LED Edge. And on the TCL Direct LED, in neither of those cases is there a local dimming function. The brightness amounts in both models are very similar. They can vary a lot depending on each scene, also depending on each picture mode. The color's accuracy, let's say that it is acceptable in both models, taking into account that they are entry level, they have a good out-of-the-box calibration. In fact, I consider that you do not need to spend more buying a probe or paying a calibrator to do that job for you, because the changes you are going to perceive will be very minimal. Now, in the high dynamic range, the main difference is that the TCL is compatible with Dolby Vision, while the Samsung is not, although, as I have always said, in practice it is not that a big difference is perceived, and I consider that HDR10 would be sufficient for the vast majority of users. In fact, my perception is that even with HDR10, the level of detail is a little better on the Samsung. Both models have high color saturation. The Samsung has this color booster parameter and the TCL has this dynamic color parameter. The color saturation is a little higher in the Samsung, but the TCL also does a very good job from my point of view. Obviously, I am not telling you to increase these parameters to the maximum capacity. I just want to show you what both models are capable of in this section of color saturation capacity. You should also know that in terms of high dynamic range, the Samsung has the HDR tone mapping parameter, and in the case of the TCL, it is known as dynamic tone mapping. What these parameters do is simply improve the contrast, the amount of brightness and the color enhancement, as well as the level of details. Performance in dark scenes on both models is good, considering that they are entry-level televisions. This is helped by the fact that they have VA panels and that the amount of brightness is not really very high. The amount of clouding effect on both televisions is actually very low, being a little more noticeable on the TCL in most scenes, but in other scenes you can perceive a little more clouding effect on the Samsung. The level of detail in both models is really very good, so for those who want good performance in dark scenes and do not want to spend a lot of money, both models can be a very good options to consider. The two televisions show a good job with the image upscaling, the results being very similar, although from my point of view it may be a little better on the part of the Samsung in most scenes, not by a big difference, but it can be perceived side by side, especially when the content has very low resolution, although even so do not expect that the result can be perceived in 4K. No current 4K TV is going to show you results in 4K when the content resolution is too low. The uniformity of gray colors is a little better on the Samsung because it shows less dirty screen effect, although in practice, when you watch content with a lot of color volume, the dirty screen effect on the TCL is not as annoying or as noticeable. But it is true that in the Samsung, it is practically not perceived. Let's say the reflections handling from light sources on the screen in both models is average, being slightly better on the part of the Samsung. The result in terms of viewing angles on both models is simply terrible, which is because they have VA panels. Therefore, as you can see, the colors lose too much volume and look too whitish when the screens are viewed from very wide angles, but it is normal due to the VA panels. The motion handling on both models is more than decent because both televisions can significantly decrease the amount of judder effect, either manually or automatically. The result is really very similar between both models, and although slight artifacts may be perceived when you opt for this digital improvement, I consider that they are not annoying. As for the gaming area, you should know that both models have a picture mode known as game mode, which you must enable in order to obtain the best results. On the TCL, you must also enable the parameter known as Game Master. This will also allow a game bar to appear on the TCL to modify and improve some parameters, such as this HGIG that can highlight the brightness and level of details a little. The Samsung does not have a game bar, and on both models, of course, you can access to the settings directly for each parameter in terms of brightness, color, color booster, contrast, among other. The main difference in terms of performance is that the TCL is compatible with 120 Hz, although up to 1440p resolution, and in 4K only up to 60 Hz, just like the Samsung. The other difference is that the TCL supports variable refresh rate technology, while the Samsung does not. Although in practice, at least in 4K at 60 Hz, as I am comparing them, the performance is simply the same. It is really very good. It is very decent, at least taking into account that they are entry-level televisions. The performance with this type of video games that have many dark scenes and fast movements on both models is really good, even though they have VA panels. The response times are more than decent. The amount of ghosting effect that can be perceived is actually very minimal, and I do not consider it to be distracting or annoying. Input lag times are also really very good, both in theory and in practice, and most likely any gamer could be satisfied in this area with either of these two models. In general, its performance in terms of motion handling, level of details, colors is good. I repeat, taking into account that they are entry-level or low-end televisions. As for the smart area, the first thing you should know are its remote controls. The Samsung One remote is much smaller, much more ergonomic or comfortable to hold. It can be charged with a USB Type-C port or with a solar panel. Let's say the TCL remote control is not the prettiest, but maybe some people can get used to it. And both have a microphone for voice commands. The other very important aspect that you should know is, of course, the operating systems. On the Samsung, it is Tizen, it is not Android, it is not Google TV. I say this because many people are still unaware of this aspect. While on the TCL is Android TV with a Google TV customization layer. The smoothness in both models is really good if I take into account that they are entry-level televisions. From time to time, we can say that we get stuck or lag, but it is nothing alarming or that stressful from my point of view. But I do consider that the smoothness is a little faster, even if only slightly on the part of the Samsung in the vast majority of cases. Both models have this menu for shortcuts, which I find really very useful. The main difference is that on the Samsung, the icons can be changed in order, while on the TCL, this is not possible. A difference in favor of the Samsung is that it has the function known as multi-view. In addition, of course, to the function known as screen mirroring, while in the TCL, only the screen mirroring function is possible. That means multi-view is not. Neither picture-in-picture nor overlay screen functions. But of course, in terms of applications, the TCL has the advantage because the Android operating system, or in this case with a Google TV customization layer, is much broader in that aspect, and APK files can be installed. And although on the Samsung you can install files externally in TPK format, so far there is very little variety of them. Although natively in the Samsung App Store, you can find many applications, including many of the most popular ones. Both models are compatible with a voice assistant, the Samsung with Bixby, and in some countries also with the Amazon Alexa, but it is not compatible with the function known as hands-free voice control, while the TCL is compatible in all countries with the Google Voice Assistant and in some with the Amazon Alexa, and it is compatible with the function known as hands-free voice control. In order to finish this video, I'll talk to you about the audio of both models, at least in these 55-inch sizes. In theory, the power is the same, but in practice, I noticed a difference. Let's say that each one has a plus point. On the Samsung, there is not great power in terms of bass and is far from an immersive experience, but I found the result to be sharper. While on the TCL, although you can perceive a little more bass, I consider that the sharpness is not the best, and the level of distortion when increasing the volume amount to maximum capacity is a little higher compared to the Samsung. On both models, performance is really good, or at least very decent, but if you are demanding, you will obviously need to buy a sound bar or a home theater. In a few seconds, I will leave you with a small performance test of the speaker system of both models so that you can more or less perceive the differences and get an idea of how they could perform in real life. Finally, if you ask me which model I recommend, the answer is really very simple. And first look at the operating system and the applications. If you need a greater variety in applications that are not so well known or that are not legal, the TCL will be your answer. If you like the Samsung brand more and prefer better performance in dark scenes, with greater color saturation capacity and a little more brightness in some picture modes, then the DU8000 is better for you, because let's say that in terms of gaming performance, in practice the performance is really very even, it's that simple. Although objectively, in most countries the TCL will be a better option in terms of value for money ratio. If nothing else, please let me know in the comments section what you think about both models, which one you would buy and why. And if you like this video, I invite you to please click the like button, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. You also can support me through VAKI or Patreon. In addition to that, it will be great if you support me by making some purchases using the referral links on the description and enable the notification bell so you can know instantly every time I upload a new video. Until next time.
The swarm brought ruin to our world. The swarm brought ruin to our world. Our proud people became refugees. Our proud people became refugees. And yet, they could not shatter